There is a kind of rise that the world never celebrates until it has already happened, a kind of ascent so quiet that almost no one notices it occurring, and this is precisely why it works, why it succeeds where louder, more announced pursuits so often fail. The quiet rise does not seek permission, does not seek an audience, does not require anyone's belief or validation before it begins. It happens in private, in the small unwitnessed hours, built through repetition so unremarkable that the person doing the building rarely feels, in any given moment, as though they are becoming anyone extraordinary at all. Understand this clearly, because it corrects one of the most damaging misconceptions about how significant transformation actually occurs. Real change is almost never dramatic in the moment it happens. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive with fanfare or sudden revelation. It accumulates, silently, through the same small decisions repeated so many times that their cumulative effect eventually becomes undeniable, though the individual decisions themselves, viewed in isolation, rarely felt significant enough to be called transformation at all. This is why so many people abandon their pursuits prematurely. They are waiting for the dramatic moment that signals real progress is occurring, and because that dramatic moment rarely arrives, they conclude, mistakenly, that no progress is being made. Napoleon Hill studied countless men who built extraordinary fortunes and extraordinary reputations, and he discovered something that contradicts the popular mythology surrounding success. Almost none of them experienced their rise as a single dramatic event. Instead, they experienced years, sometimes decades, of quiet, unglamorous effort that produced no visible external validation for long stretches of time, effort that most observers, had they been watching closely, would have dismissed as unremarkable, ordinary, hardly the stuff of legend. The legend was constructed only in retrospect, after the quiet accumulation had finally produced results significant enough to be noticed by a world that had, until that point, paid no attention whatsoever. This is the first truth about the quiet rise. It requires you to continue building even when no one is watching, even when no external evidence confirms that your effort is actually producing anything of value. This is perhaps the single greatest test of genuine commitment, because it is remarkably easy to maintain discipline when applause, recognition, or visible progress provides regular confirmation that your efforts are worthwhile. It is entirely different to maintain that same discipline when months, sometimes years, pass without any external validation, when the only evidence you possess that your effort matters is your own private conviction that the accumulation, however invisible currently, is genuinely occurring. Consider how differently you might approach your own pursuits if you fully internalized this truth. The absence of visible progress does not necessarily mean the absence of actual progress. Growth, particularly the kind of deep, structural growth required for genuine mastery, often occurs beneath the surface long before it becomes visible externally, the way a seed spends considerable time developing roots underground before any growth becomes apparent above the soil. The person who abandons their pursuit during this invisible root-building phase, mistaking invisibility for failure, forfeits precisely the growth that was quietly occurring, simply because that growth had not yet become externally visible enough to provide the validation they were unconsciously waiting for. There is a second truth about the quiet rise, and it concerns the specific relationship between silence and depth. The pursuits announced loudly, publicized extensively before any real substance has been built, often produce less genuine transformation than the pursuits carried out privately, without announcement, without the pressure of public expectation shaping and distorting the actual work being done. This is because public announcement introduces a specific kind of pressure, the pressure to perform progress for an audience, rather than simply making progress for its own sake, and this pressure frequently corrupts the actual quality of effort being invested, redirecting energy toward appearing successful rather than toward the quieter, more difficult work of becoming genuinely capable. Consider the specific difference between building a skill privately, judged only by your own honest assessment of improvement, and building that same skill publicly, judged by an audience whose approval or disapproval begins to matter more than the actual quality of the skill itself. The private pursuit allows for the kind of genuine, unglamorous repetition that mastery actually requires, including the failures, the false starts, the awkward early attempts that would be embarrassing if performed for an audience but are simply necessary steps when performed in private. The public pursuit, by contrast, often produces a kind of premature polish, a performance of competence that substitutes for the genuine competence that only extensive, unwitnessed practice can actually produce. This is why the quiet rise, though slower to attract attention, often produces more durable, more genuine capability than louder, more publicized pursuits. The person building quietly has no audience to perform for, no reputation to protect prematurely, no pressure to appear further along than they actually are. This freedom from performance allows for the kind of honest, unguarded practice that produces real mastery, rather than the kind of self-conscious, audience-aware effort that so often prioritizes appearing.